Now, in the past, I've touched on miniatures and all the cool uses and where you can get some cool ones, and I have way too many in my collection, so now, let's start learning how to paint them. Hey fellow Game Masters, I'm Richard Quiner, and welcome back to the Daily D20, your daily dose of all things role-playing games, where I'm helping you build your world and master your game. If you like this channel and you are into the content that I'm producing here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when the new videos go up every single day. First, I just want to say, as a miniature painter, I am not great. I don't enter competitions. I think I'm good. Like, I'm at the good level, but I'm not at the great level. And when it comes to miniature paintings, how I see it is there is a learning curve. It's pretty easy to get into. It's moderately difficult to become good at it. But to become to become one of those competition painters, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work. I'm not going to teach you how to do that stuff until I learn how to do it myself. But in this one, we're going to go with the easy route. We're going to go easy so we get okay at it, and we can get those minis painted and on the table, and I can almost guarantee that you'll be happy with the results, especially if you've never done this before. So let's talk about some things you need. Of course, for your painting miniatures, you need to have miniatures or at least one miniature to paint, and I did a whole video talking about different resources where you can get your minis, so look at that video, then come back after you have a mini, and then we need to buy a couple more things. You're going to need some paintbrushes. Now, there is a common misconception when you think of painting for minis that you need to get the smallest paintbrush imaginable because the mini is so small. Well, that is not true. You don't want the tiny paintbrush. You want one that's kind of middle size. They come in different sizes. I'll show you these ones here. These are the size you want. They will hold enough paint and you'll be able to get enough coverage on your mini, just like these. You also don't need to go out and buy the most expensive brushes because you're just getting started and you're just learning. You can start with some kind of crappy acrylic bristled brushes that aren't the most perfect artistic thing, but they'll do the job for the beginner. Next, you're going to need some primer. There's two main types of primer. There's a spray-on primer you can get, and there's a brush-on primer you can get, and really it's just different strokes for different folks. For this model, I am just going to brush it on because that's more likely what you're going to be able to get a hold of. Next up, you're going to need paints. Now, most miniatures nowadays are painted with acrylic paints. They're a water-based color, and realistically, you can use any acrylic paint you get your hands on. The miniature model paints you can get are slightly different than the ones you can buy in your craft stores, but like I said, for this purposes, you don't need the fancy stuff. You can just use regular acrylic paint from your craft store. You're going to want colors that you can put on your miniature, any of the shades you might want. Some people like to have a different shade or a different bottle of paint for each color they use. Other people just like to mix their paints together. We're not going to get into mixing paint and color theory, but it's usually good to have a couple different colors and some black and white in case you need to lighten or darken the paint depending on your use. You will, of course, need a palette. You could use just a plastic or foam plate or the lid of a Tupperware container, anything that will hold the paint and not absorb it. And last, you're going to need a cup of water to rinse your brush off, and to dilute the paint, you're going to use a lot of water, and it's going to be messy, and you're going to have to replace the water a lot. So get ready for this. So the first thing you need to do, like I mentioned before, is you're going to prime your mini. If you're using a spray primer, you're going to want to take it outside and hold the spray can about a good 8 to 12 inches from the mini, and try not to spray it too much. Don't get it thickly globbed on there. Multiple passes back and forth, and you'll be able to get the mini pretty well primed without wasting a lot of paint or without hiding all the details of the mini. If you are doing it with the brush, like I'm doing here, you're just going to want to cover the whole dang thing. Make sure you get all the cracks, all the crevices. Again, try not to hide the details, and it's okay to dilute the primer if you need to. That's what I usually do, is dilute it a little bit so it's a little more watery, and it doesn't hide all the details of my mini. When it comes to primer colors, it really depends on the color of the mini. If I'm painting a mini and I want it to be a dark shades and more dark earthy tones, I will go with a black. If I want it to be light and blues and reds and yellows, I will go with a white. And if I'm somewhere in the middle, and more often than not, this is the one I choose because I mix the colors on the mini, I will go with a gray. If you opted to go ahead and buy a WizKids mini or one of the official Dungeons & Dragons miniatures that is created by WizKids, you're going to find that they're already pre-primed, so you can skip this step. When you get into trying to be a great painter, if you get there, you will not want to trust this primer, but for our purposes here, it works just fine and you can skip the step of priming. After you've finished priming your mini, you need to let it dry. Don't rush this step. Don't just get start painting right away. Just give it a minute to dry. Wait for it. Wait for it. Wait. Okay, now we can paint. Now for this video, this is part 1, so I'm just talking about the base coat of painting. You're going to take your paints, put a little bit on your palette. I would say do one color at a time. I like to start with the paint that's going to cover the most surface area of my mini. So I'm not going to be painting the belt buckles and the belts. I'm going to be painting the clothes. I'm going to be painting the armor, the things that take up the most surface area first. I'm going to put my paint on my palette and I'm going to water it down just a little bit to give it more of a milky consistency, maybe a little more viscous than milk. But you definitely don't want to take the paint straight out of the bottle and put it on your mini, because you're more likely to get some clumps and it's not going to look very good. So make sure you water your paint down and then just go over the whole mini section by section, color by color, painting it with a nice base coat. I'm going to do this fairly quickly because I am just doing the basics on this one. It's just a simple miniature. I'm going to spend most of my time on the armor because it's the most surface area. I will spend some time on the skin and the different weapons, and I'll work my way from the larger surface area down to the smaller and smaller surface areas. And here's the thing, if you mess up when painting a mini, if I spill over a little bit onto something else, I can always go back and repaint over it and it's not going to affect it too much. So remember that you don't have to be perfect all the time as long as you can go back and fix it. Sometimes what you'll see when painting minis is the color doesn't give you the same coverage that you want, especially since it's watered down. And in those situations, you gotta let the paint dry, then come back and do a second coat. That's how you're able to build up a good color on the mini without hiding the details. Several thin coats of the same paint. Now that you're on a roll painting the mini, keep this up until you have the whole thing covered. Make sure you do the belts, the buckles, the weapons, the clothing, the shoes, the skin. Just keep this going until your miniature has one base coat where everything is covered. Soon after you start doing your base coat, you'll find that you have a pretty decently painted mini. It's kind of like painting between the lines. But there is a way to continue elevating this same mini and make it look even better, which is next week in the Miniature Basics Part 2 video that will be coming up next Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. Now today's question is, if you decide to go get a mini and follow up on this painting thing, what mini would you like? Let me know in the comments below. Go out and find it and let me know if you got it. If you liked this video, remember to hit the like button and, of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon if you like the content that's here. And that has been Miniature Painting Basics number 1. I've been Richard Quiner. Thank you for watching.